normally everyone works from home on Thursdays.
Yeah.
Mostly, so it's a fine
I know.
Because yours is just on market.
Don't hold it. Don't hold it.
Yeah.
I feel like not how to restart. Scooter from a big file.
Are you kidding?
Yeah.
Don't get it.
Maybe that's I love it too.
I know.
But you're like the legend was Stop that. Every time I see people on culture as a school.
I did. I was trying to be hip.
I
It
was
just
just
doesn't work for me.
We're gonna back it fast.
How far do you think it work?
Takes me about, it's a 35-minute walk or a 10-minute scooter.
Yes, stop it.
Right.
I like the hills are hard though.
Okay.
Little Vespa?
Not, it's kind of, it's the, like, little razor kind of stuff.
Oh, the Raider Street.
Yeah.
Team Ben,
Even better.
more refugees.
All right, let's get started. So, I think everybody knows James, but if you haven't met James Peng, this is James Peng. We have some folks online too, or on video from New York, San Francisco, and Denver.
Hi, guys.
Some other people you might have met. So we're really excited to have you, James. As I mentioned, we're doing a kickoff next week, and to really talk about like a day-and-a-half session where we're going to talk about how we talk to other types of business objectives other than KPIs. We're really good at that, I think, of understanding KPIs of our customers. But then, so we're really interested in understanding more about how you think about bigger business objectives, some of the things that your executives think about, and then, of course, as salespeople, you have sales development in the room, you have account executives in the room. We're reaching out to pretty much anyone that's spending in mobile and trying to break through, which is pretty hard, right? Like, I'm sure you're the recipient of tons and tons of solicitations, so we're really eager to pick your brain on that. Yeah. So that's why we're here. So I prepped you with a few questions, but for everyone, jump in. Let's make this a good conversation, and let's learn as much as we can. So I think it'd be great, just for everyone's benefit, James, you could give a brief introduction of who you are. I think everybody knows. We could just set the stage.
Yeah, absolutely. So, my name is James Peng, and I head all of our mobile acquisition at Match. Match is comprised of kind of a handful of like the top dating apps like Match, OkCupid, Tinder, Plenty of Fish, and kind of 45 plus different dating apps. So over there, I oversee kind of all the mobile app acquisition, like kind of those activities, as well as kind of all of our social acquisitions, anything running through Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, etc. And I oversee kind of a team of, it kind of fluctuates around, but kind of roughly 10 people. I work under our CMO and our VP of Match overall for Match marketing. Prior to Match, I worked at a company called Storm8 down in Redwood City, and there I headed user acquisition for 3 years before Match.
Cool. So you said you report to the CMO. You actually your executives are all coming in because you guys are going to Facebook. Mm-hmm. It'd be interesting to understand how that relationship works, and specifically I'm interested, how does your team support the larger business objectives of not only Match but then it may be an IAC. How does that all fit together?
Yeah, sure. So first of all, reporting structure. I actually report to our VP of marketing for Match, and so our way we're organized is for Match Group we have kind of with Match itself, Match.com, and then we have People Media, which is kind of all our affinity dating apps like Black People Meet, Our Time, Senior People Meet, etc. And then we kind of have different separate entities for for OkCupid, for Tinder, etc. And they all kind of have their own. They all have their own kind of management structure and system. And so for the way it works for me, I report directly to our VP for Match.com. It's just organizational, and we all roll up to the CMO. And so your question was around how do we kind of solve the needs of Match as well as IAC. And so Match itself runs pretty standalone as a company in terms of budget and management, everything as a kind of completely separate company. We are still majority owned by IAC, but we operate essentially 100% 100% standalone. So when we're trying to achieve objectives, we have Match.com in mind, so for Match itself, Match itself is comprised of kind of Match.com. It runs standalone. So Match.com runs with Match and our People Media, and kind of that's one company for us, and all the other companies have their own P&Ls. Like OkCupid has its own P&L, Tinder has its own P&L. My role operates across them, but each of them kind of have objectives that they then direct to us on the marketing group, which we then convert to kind of different strategies and campaigns and partners and ways to achieve it.
And so, can you give us an example of some of those objectives?
Yeah, sure. So objectives are likely to be number one is going to be budget, and how we'll set a number for budget that we decide at the beginning of the year, and then with budget we'll also have registrations, and those are kind of our top two goals that we must achieve for all of marketing. And in kind of sub goals, the next layer of goals are within kind of registrations. We want to split it up by types of user. So the next level is male, female, and kind of we start thinking about gender and demographic split. So we have a certain female ratio we'd like to achieve, as well as a ratio between different age groups. These are groups that we'd like to maintain while we keep our budget in mind. At the same level is ROI. So if we kind of spend, we get a certain amount of rights. We also want to achieve a certain fixed ROI, or as much ROI as possible with those goals in mind.
So when do those goals get set?
Yeah, so those goals get set during our budgeting process, which is Q1.
Q1, like calendar Q1?
Calendar Q1.
Okay.
So we generally have all these things set by end of March.
And what influences all these figures? Like how it goes into the final number that comes out?
Yeah, so it's going to be board, CEO, and kind of the entire C-suite. Mm-hmm. They'll gather with our marketing team to decide, here are the market forces, here are where we decide that here's what we think that we can, here's what we need to be, and here's what we can do. We try to balance all these different factors in order to decide on this is what reasonable production is, and we make kind of low and high cases off of that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Daria, you have a question?
Hi James, my name is Daria. Thanks for coming in. I just had a quick question. Considering like the unique position of your role and how it's cross-functional across the different entities, how would you recommend for us to kind of cross-sell into that once we're already working with you in one of the arenas?
Yeah, great question. So, and that's actually a really good question to ask, because it's really hard to understand even my role, because again, I operate across multiple companies. I'm directly accountable for Match and People Media, but I will act more as a manager / almost consultant to a lot of these companies, because we have so many. For example, we have Medic in Europe, we have Parker Fedo in Brazil, we have another one called Pears or Eureka in Japan. And so for these companies, they all have their own teams, but I may not manage them directly. I may act more as a consultant to them. And so you wouldn't know that without kind of asking me and having me detail that. And it's tough to even as an intro, there's a lot to get into, right? So I think it's really understanding exactly what that person who you're talking to has direct accountability for, what they control, and what needs to happen in order for decisions to be made. For example, if you were to ask me about Tinder, I manage Tinder campaigns directly with my team. However, we don't have kind of budget accountability, meaning like we're not accountable for the ROI. But you wouldn't know that without kind of talking to me and asking me about it. So I think it's having a very clear understanding of specifically what that person and their team kind of manage directly, and also what they're accountable for, to understand what how their objectives align with different things that you may propose.
Cool. Thanks.
So, one second. So, just before we kind of get into like how we sell to you, I want to stay on goals for just a little bit longer. So, your goals can come out of Q1. You've got your business objectives in terms of budget and registrations, right? Mm-hmm. So here we are, end of Q2. What's the process that you are like looking at those targets where you are now? Like, are you ahead, hitting, below, and then what do you do at a point like this or a quarter from now based on where you are trending towards those targets?
Yeah. Okay. So we do track this very closely every month, and we try to stay as precisely on budget as we can. In fact, towards the end of the month, we actually have if I'm like 50,000 or 100,000 below run rate, we try as much as we can to fill that. Because actually, Match is very different than companies that worked with before, because Stormy is a lot more flexible with a smaller structure. But now that we're kind of a public, fully managed, like $1 billion company, it's something that we need to keep a very close eye with. So I manage extremely closely to the run rate that we're trying to achieve, and then we kind of reestablish our target budgets as we go. So almost at a quarterly basis, like my VP of marketing actually goes and manages this process with our executives, and then lets me know, hey, these are the objectives. Here's how we realign budget, or here's based on kind of what we've achieved and what we think next quarter is going to look like.
Okay. So how should we think about, you mentioned your VP is, on a monthly or maybe more often is going and working with the executives on where you're at. So how should we think about what you need to deliver to your VP?
Yeah, sure. So what I need to deliver is basically, my goal is kind of controlling the portfolio, managing the spend between different channels, and trying to collectively get to that goal. So that's what I need to deliver. It doesn't matter what channels I operate, kind of how I should achieve these goals. It's kind of how I orchestrate these different channels to get to that. So my deliverable is essentially, this is the spend collectively across these different channels. This is my total registrations and kind of demographic split, and this is how and then we'll go through kind of, these are the top channels that help me to achieve that. So we'll dive into detail a little bit in terms of like how we got there.
And you say channels are marketing channels for that particular app, or?
That's right.
Yeah, okay, got it. All right, so you answered this question to me earlier, but I was gonna ask, do your executives engage and have relationships with ad partners? So I'm guessing if they're all here for a Facebook Summit, there is some degree of relationship. But how should we think about that? Your VP, CMO, other executives at Match, what relationships do they maintain with partners in the ecosystem, and how does that shake out?
Yeah, I would say definitely stack ranks by budget. So if Facebook is kind of obviously our #1 channel, and so I think it's very important because of kind of the dual relationship. It's very important so that Facebook can kind of call on our execs if something is very important and needs to happen, and vice versa. If we need to call on them if something needs to be pushed through. So that's probably the most important part of it is we maintain those relationships so that that relationship is there at the most critical moments, and kind of second and third tier relationships are there as well. Our execs generally prefer not to be focused in these relationships, and they prefer for us to maintain them. However, the execs do bring in marketing channels as well sometimes, sometimes as a result of relationships. We do maintain some channels for relationships because.
Can you give an example of that?
Yeah, sure. There's for example, there's a DSP named for example Activist, which is out of Denver, and they're pretty kind of a relatively small player, and we just maintain some spend on them occasionally just for relationship purposes. So that happens. It's not super common, but we'll bring those in. I'll bring in relationships as well, and so it's important because it does get a foot in the door and gives you an opportunity to perform, and that's most often the thing that most sales letters don't have is you don't have that relationship to begin with. So once you have that, you're much further ahead.
Yeah.
Right.
So this is one of our goals. Maybe in the second half of the year, we're very, very proficient at selling to marketers on the front lines, really in the weeds of the campaigns. But we're looking to get a better vocabulary, get a better understanding of how to build and develop relationships with senior executives. So what do you think that we should think about when doing that? And then how do we, in doing so, not step on the toes of people that are running the campaigns that they might already have a relationship with?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I think it's always hardest to make the first relationship, and I think a lot of my strongest relationships are definitely kind of cross-generational. Like you've carried on from one company to the next, and it's a layer of kind of trust that you've brought on. And so those of you that worked with me before at Storm8, we know each other, and therefore it's not. I don't even need to do any tests before signing up, things like that. I'll bring up another example. Yes, an example earlier, but for example, Nanigans is one. They're ad tech platform that we've used previously at Storm8. Had a lot of success on them. They tried them at Match and didn't work out before, so they kind of just left it. But when I came on, I just I mentioned that this has worked extremely well, and kind of explained and kind of sold it internally. I sold it myself without them even coming in because the relationship was so strong. I had such a deep understanding of the tech, and and that's why we're now kind of integrating and working on the process, because of that sales cycle and that, our by me selling it internally, kind of overriding even what our CMO mentioned. Like CMO honestly didn't want to give it a shot because of their experience, but the relationship kind of carried through. And so that was super critical there, is again, generational trust. And so that's born not through kind of cold calls and things like that. It's born through, I think a combination of personal relationships as well as just a very soft sell type tactic over time, So it's just building that, how do you build that initial trust?
Cool, there's some questions?
Yeah, Daria again. So in terms of the soft sell tactic, I think, for my role specifically as a CSM, that can be like what makes the difference between scaling and continuing a relationship versus maybe a partner not feeling nurtured. I'm curious to know what are like the soft sell tactics that stand out to you the most. Are they, people being more consultative or maybe coming in to learn more about the product in your office, or what other pointers do you have about that?
Yeah, so I think definitely any opportunity that you have to like exhibit kind of your like kind of strengths, know-how, and the product itself is great. But you have to kind of even just get that meeting to begin with.
Yeah.
And to get that meeting, I think, in my experience at least, the emails really work. The hit rate is just so low, and most of the time I just don't want to see them. You might get some people that are less experienced or build that experience. They already know most of the partners they want to work with, and so you'll need to get in through either building a relationship yourself or a very strong introduction. Introductions are great. I think most of the time we kind of, it's kind of a you scratch my back, I scratch yours for others. So generally it's if I make an introduction to someone, it's a courtesy to take it if it's a very strong connection. But in terms of like building it yourself, it really is through in-person interactions. Like over time, it's just that reinforcement of, hey, you seem familiar enough, and if I don't sense that you're trying super hard to sell me and push me towards this product that I don't really have interest in, maybe I'll listen to what you have to say, right? I think it's building that rapport, and eventually like getting it to a point where you can kind of slowly bring up the idea of how can I help you. It's a service, right? It's not like you're not trying to shove it in the face. You're trying to ask how can I help you. And so I think that kind of Liftoff did answer that for us, kind of gradually over time. And as I learned more about the product and more about how we can integrate deeper and how we can solve our specific needs, I've sold Liftoff on my own, like two customers that where I think it's a great fit. And so that's the kind of sales structure that I think is ideal.
Cool. Anybody get a question earlier?
Yeah, I don't think it's relevant.
Okay. All right. So one more question regarding senior executives. So if we were to whether it be in person or whatever, we open up a dialogue with senior executives. Like, what do you think? What sort of vocabulary do you think that they're using? Like problems that they're trying to solve that we should be thinking about versus talking about campaign performance. Like what we could do for them for like individual.
Are you still talking about like kind of getting your foot in the door, kind of how
could be getting your foot in the door, or let's say we're at a conference, we're sitting at a table, lunch table, and there's your VP or your CMO sitting right next to Kate, and what's an interesting conversation for that CMO to have with Kate that might be different than what she would have with a UA manager at a gaming studio?
Yeah, what CMOs love to hear is something that either the competitors are on or that's completely new to market. So that always catches the ear, and I always get forwarded those emails. Like those are the ones that they tend not to ignore so much. It's just points about your competitor is using this, or here's something very new, and it's something new that we're developing is very proprietary for whatever reason, and it's kind of convincing. It sounds, and it's again, it's convincing. So those are generally the conversations that and the points that do lead somewhere. Just if there's something super interesting to them. And a lot of the times that they get forward to me, and I'm like, okay, well, about this, or it's not actually interesting, or something like that. But at least it gets their attention.
Right. Okay. And then for the benefit of the group, you're having this summit later with Facebook, like all your executives are gonna be there, like what sort of things are you gonna be talking about there that we can think about? If, like, we could make a parallel to, like, interesting topics that we could bring to a group like that, whether it be Match or someone else.
Yeah, so for a group like our execs, we're going to Facebook and they're going to talk about kind of a whole slew of different topics, kind of the entire, like the whole range of, these are different ways we can work with Facebook. These are different ways from kind of the top of the funnel to the bottom of the funnel. From like, here's how you build your brand through storytelling with Facebook to, you know, here's how you do more, here's how we're improving our technology, our targeting technology for the next generation of lookalikes. So new betas and things like that. So it does kind of, they do try to cover the gamut of, this is kind of all our offerings and this is what we're working on next. So that's the kind of tone of the conversation. I think that's great for kind of the executive level. You know, you never want to dig into deep on, you know, this is how you build your lookalike audiences and things like that.